Well, hello, everybody. Nice to see you again for our Alive Design Roundtable discussion.
Yes, good to see you.
Hello.
I know we're having a chilly winter day, but I think only Dean has snow on the ground.
Yes, and lots of it.
Yep. So today we're going to talk about work-life strategies. Some people still say work-life balance, but balance looks different to everyone. So the more modern approach is to develop personal strategies for how you engage in work and your life that dialed in and fit for you, and also mesh in the workplace that you're participating in. So, especially post COVID, everyone is working differently. There are people that have returned to the office part-time, never will return to an office. The way people work has been dramatically altered. And so just developing strategies that work for you and the life you want to be leading from the Alive Design people. So let me go into our slides real quick and we'll prime the pump for our discussion today. So share. I've had coffee and everything. This shouldn't be a problem.
Mhm.
Present. Okay. You know, when I saw this picture and chose it for the slide, I thought, how noisy is this office?
Terrible.
Right.
Chairs are on wheels, but you get people in there talking and clacking their desktop, keyboards. That's probably a noisy place. But some people do well with that distraction. So
It's too open for me. I like to have a little bit of a wall cubicle thing, just so that,
yeah,
like everyone's staring at everyone the whole time.
yeah,
Also,
very modern. Go ahead.
it's cold and sterile, and it makes me want to jump out one of those windows.
Oh, I,
Yeah.
I like all the light. For me,
Uh-huh.
it's calming because there's like three colors. You know,
Mm.
the only
I see.
colors are going to be the clothes people are wearing as they come and go. So it's for my eyes,
Yeah.
it's a little bit calming, and I love all the light. But I think that might be a noisy workplace. So, okay, let's go to our first slide. All right, work-life strategies. Let's talk about some work strategies and we'll riff on these after we've come through it. Own your time. So that's a big challenge, especially with people that are now working remotely or in a hybrid situation where they have remote time and in-office time. The idea that, well, you're working from home and so you don't really need a lunch break. Or, if you work past 5 o'clock, what's the big deal? You don't have a commute. So there's this idea that your time isn't your own in the workplace. Understanding if you love that and you work 10 hours a day because you love work, good for you, but choose that. Don't have it chosen for you. So I've talked with some folks who, man, the expectations, they have overseas development teams that they manage. And I've talked with a client who had scheduled midnight conference calls, two small kids at home, a husband who was running his own business at from home, and midnight conference calls with an Indian development team. I'm like, girl, how long are you going to do this? So there's some things you can do in a sprint because you're closing a project or winning a project, or there's a little marathon that you're running and then it stops and then you have a regular work schedule. But the saying is that nobody's tombstone says, I wish I could have worked more. So own your time. Just decide that for yourself. How much is enough for you? It says have clean expectations. I meant clear.
I like clean. It works
I,
though.
I suppose clean is
Yeah.
also good, but I meant clear expectations of work culture. So there's a popular question that's being asked in interviews today. How do you feel about responding to email in off hours? And so know what you're bringing. Like, if it's once in a while, or maybe your answer is I turn my business phone off at 5 o'clock. I turn it on again at 8 o'clock the following morning. Like that's when I'm available. I might peek at some things just a wonder, to handle curiosity. Did we win the deal? Did he get my proposal? But I'm not going to respond. Or I have a buffer, so between 5 and 6, I'll peek at email and respond by phone, understand what the work culture expectations are and whether or not that's a fit for you. And then making friends and allies at work is very helpful, especially if you're new in that job or that workplace, so that you know what the culture is. Um, get to know your boss, your peers, your direct reports. And it doesn't have to be, Gossip Girl. It can just be you have 3 kids, you were raised in North Dakota, you don't mind snow. Okay. We have things to talk about before our one-on-ones. Get to know them a little bit, let them get to know you a little bit. Bring some fun. So Brian's going to mention, I think, fill your cup today, but you can be a little bit playful. You can use a knock knock joke as an icebreaker before a conference call or an in-person meeting. It's not against the law to have a little bit of fun, as long as you're not doing it at somebody's expense or you're not being rude. But setting the tone of having a little bit of fun and relaxing actually helps people be comfortable and productive. Make industry friends and connections. And so I'm working with a client now who kind of kept his head down for like 12 years at a company, and the company changed hands and he was made redundant. And he had to sort of restart a bunch of industry friendships and connections because he just was doing his job and sending his kid to college, and they did, stuff on the weekends with the family. He didn't like make a point of staying connected in the event that he would need to look for a job. But those things happen. Companies are sold, locations are moved. I think Facebook is moving their community notes people to Texas or something. So, change happens. It's built in. Just be prepared a little bit that some change will come your way at some point. And then finding an in-house mentor or hiring a coach. If you feel like you could dial in your strategies in a way that's more comfortable or productive for you, or so that you can get some of your time back. Sometimes people just don't know how to say to their boss, turning my phone off at 6 o'clock. you know? And so feel free to send me emails all around the clock, and you'll hear from me again at 8 o'clock in the morning. So how do you say that? A coach or a mentor can help you with that. Also, your friends and allies when you're talking. Do you respond to these 10 p.m. freak out emails? No? Okay, good. I won't either. You need to just find out what it is. And then life strategies, what is okay to be prioritizing. I've worked and we all have worked with people who have had restructured their families. They've come through a divorce or they've lost a loved one. They're having to look after an older parent and they didn't used to have to do that. There are things in your family that has to be accommodated sometimes forever or for a little while. So if you stay connected with your family and friends, even with a busy work schedule, you have people to lean on when the time comes that you need to do the leaning. You again aren't like the client who's reconnecting with people after 3 years or 5 years. So it can be simple strategies like, keeping a birthday calendar or watching the Facebook birthday updates and saying happy birthday, little things to stay connected with people. Brian's going to mention fill your cup activities. And basically, those are what is unrelated to your work and may or may not actually be unrelated to your family that fills your cup. It could be, words with friends, or it could be, crossword puzzles or online chess matches or the theater or the symphony or 100-mile bike rides 4 times a year. What are the things that maybe stretch you, put you in a different group of friends, and it just kind of fills your cup so you feel your life is rewarding. Make time for those. And if you aren't doing it now, a coach or friends can help you find some things, try some things that will fill your cup. Finding like-minded people. There's been, an election. that cause some strife with friend groups and family groups. Finding some people that you can speak to comfortably and not offend because they don't like your opinions, and you don't have to edit yourself and always keep your opinions to yourself. So search for some like-minded people. That's a good life strategy. Don't only be in an echo chamber, but have some people who agree with you about whatever it is you think. Consider community service projects. And so every now and then we see, hurricanes or wildfires or earthquakes or other things that happen, train derailments. And community service people, have plans to help deliver food or clear roadways. They come out with chainsaws and cut the trees that are blocking the roads. Having connections to those and being able to pitch in because you're on the phone list or whatever can be a rewarding life strategy. Consider joining a faith community if you're not in one now. That can be a very rewarding life strategy if you find yourself wondering, what is the point of it all anyway? So that might be helpful. And then a coach or a mentor might ask you, what is your 5-year plan? That's kind of coming back as a question in interviews, actually, for executives. Do you have an idea about where you'll be in 5 years? Do you want to climb this corporate ladder? Are you thinking about early retirement? Where do we sort of slot you in with what your plan for your work career is? So you don't have to map out the next 5 years, but at least consider it. So, and then finally, our memes. Okay, the first one is, I'm not an early bird or a night owl. I'm some form of permanently exhausted pigeon. So I think if you don't own your time, you could look like that after a few months in a job where they own your time. So I like the middle one. How old do you have to be before you know what's going on? Particularly with millennials, when they're in a workplace with boomers, they don't get the social cues, they don't get the signals, they don't get the cultural references, they don't get the jokes. And so it's like, how long will I have to be here? Do I have to turn 40 to understand what they're talking about? Or will I catch on at some point? So, and then last, boss, are you on drugs? Me. You and I both know you do not pay me enough to have a drug problem. Oh, goodness. All right. So there's some fuel for our fire today. And, Brian, I mentioned you about um, people that sometimes feel overwhelmed or are putting things off, and then maybe something on fill your cup, if I can prompt you.
Okay, I'll talk about that later. What was the first part?
The
You're,
first one was when people are putting things off. They feel like they can't cope with the challenge before them.
so yeah, I'll go over my points here.
Okay.
And then I'll get to that stuff. So one thing is talking about work-life strategies or work-life balance. If you really, really love what you do, you don't really need work-life balance
Mhm,
because you just love what you're doing. But most people don't have that situation. Like
mhm.
if you're doing your dream business or your dream job or whatever, you can spend 50, 60 hours a week on it and just, I mean, you love it, you know? But that's not the case for most people. So most people definitely need some kind of strategy to balance that out and make that work. Um, I think one strategy, which I think this is good advice for kids who are trying to figure out what they want to do, for the rest of their lives. We ask kids those questions as if they could even know. I
I
mean,
want
they
to be a
usually,
fireman. Yeah.
yeah. Um, is I actually think it makes sense to look at like the different reasonably like higher paying careers out there. Find one that doesn't require too much training. It's not too hard to get into, and that you would be reasonably happy, reasonably comfortable doing, and just do that. And then like pursue your passions or hobbies on the side. I think that's really good advice for kids because the thing is, sometimes the question is like, should you pick a career out of what you love to do or something for money? But the thing is, even if you pick something you love to do, there's still gonna be parts that you don't like. But if you just pick something that you're pretty cool with, you're pretty comfortable with, makes good money, that gives you more options to turn your passion into a business or something later, you know? So I think that's a good answer for like, teenagers trying to figure out what they're going to do for their next move
Mhm.
for their career. Um, yeah, I'll give you a really crazy example of work-life balance. This is something I used to do. So when I was towing cars, when I was a tow truck driver, in between calls, like I would just be in the truck, just sitting in the truck, like, and I just had to wait until I would like my phone would go off and I had to go tow a car. I would literally go to the pool, hang out with friends, maybe play a little bit, and then if my phone went off, I'd hit the road, just immediately get up, go, and go tow a car, and that was fine. I mean, it's like so I was actually getting to kind of hang out and
Mhm.
enjoy myself even while I was at work because there's literally nothing for me to do if there isn't a car that needs to be towed. So um, that was cool. I'll talk about another job experience I had. I used to work at the AT&T call center doing customer service,
Mhm.
representative. And my experience there, and this is a good example to show you how much a job can change and like a job can work for you in the beginning, but then over time something changes and it doesn't work for you. So in the beginning, I was taking like maybe 25 to 30 calls a day in an 8-hour shift. Then within about 6 months, that doubled. They doubled the call volume. So when that happened, I went from loving the job to hating the job.
Mhm.
Like the breaks I would get in between calls made that job. Like that's what made it amazing. Like I could handle people's problems on the phone, all good, no issues. I'd get little breaks in between calls. Great. It was like easy. When it got to the point where as soon as you hang up, the phone would ring again. Hang up, ring, hang up, ring, hang up, ring, hang up, ring. Then I was like, I hate this. Like now I can't do this. Because the stress like 10x'd
Mhm.
when you don't even get like a 5-minute break in between calls.
Mhm.
That 10x the stress.
Mhm.
So if something like that happens at your job, you probably need to find a new job. But also, you really got to have ways to de-stress after work. And before I quit that job, I literally like put in my 2 weeks, and then I literally didn't even finish my 2 weeks. I was like, I can't. Like, I sent them my 2 weeks notice on Friday. Over the weekend, I was just like, I can't even go back on Monday. I just, I'd rather be homeless. Like, I'd rather just like, I can't do this. Because the stress went like off the charts.
Mhm.
So definitely in those situations, you got to have, and I would say it's really good. A really good strategy is to have a very reliable way to relieve stress after work. Don't have a hobby that could also be frustrating. You
Mhm.
know, you got to have something that's like guaranteed it's going to relax you, de-stress you.
Mhm.
So if you like play video games after work to de-stress, don't play like a frustrating video game
Mhm.
because that's going to make it worse.
Mhm.
Or whatever you do. If you watch shows, don't watch a horror movie that's going to stress you out even more or something. Like you got to have something that really works to like de-stress you. Yeah, and you mentioned making friends at work, Mom, and I think that's really good. It's really good for getting tips, like for how to navigate the workplace for people who have been there a while, and they can like really give you
Mhm.
the insider knowledge on like, here's how you deal with this person, here's how you deal with the boss,
Mhm.
here's the way this really works, even though the company says it works a different way. This
Mhm.
is what we really do because like
Mhm.
that's just how we make it work.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's a good strategy for that. And yeah. I could go on, but I feel like I've been talking for a while here. Um, Dean, you want to go and then maybe I'll come back.
You're on mute.
Oh yeah, mute.
All right, I'm talking about strategies for work life, etc.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think my first recommendation would be to start at they're kind of cliche now, but two phrases you hear a lot when considering these questions are start with your why and begin with the end in mind.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people get into a really bad situation with their work because they don't even know why they're working.
Yeah.
mm,
And that really people work for, I think, two primary reasons. One, they get a sense that they're doing something good, right? So I'm a veterinarian and I help all these families keep their animals healthy. Great.
Mhm.
mm,
But the real reason people work is money. Okay.
Pay for their
That
life. Mhm.
what's that?
To pay for their life.
Right. To resource their living. Yes.
Mhm.
And so I think one thing that's helpful is to encourage people not to think about work, but to think about money and to think work is a way of solving my money problem.
Mhm.
So we are all born with this problem that is fundamentally economic. We have to pay for ourselves somehow.
Mhm.
Now, if you're born into a family of billionaires, your
Mhm.
grandfather solved that problem for you or whoever,
Yeah.
right? But one way or another, you have to solve that problem.
Thanks for the railroad, Grandpa. Yeah.
Right. And so I think it's helpful for people to, if they want to have some strategy for not being destroyed by their job, to think about what is the holistic vision of a life that I'm trying to create? What would a satisfying life look to me like?
Mhm.
And then
yes.
how could I pay for it?
Mhm.
And so once you switch from what do I do about my job to how can I pay for my life, lots of possibilities open up for you,
Mhm.
right? So maybe you have a job, maybe you have multiple jobs, maybe you have no job and you have a business. I mean, there are many other things because I guess what I'm saying is I think a lot of people get into bad positions with their jobs because they think the job is the end when it's really a means to a larger end, which is to solve your money problem.
Mhm.
And also, often jobs are not that great at solving that problem, right? There are
Mhm.
lots of
Yeah,
people who work 60 hours a week and still don't have enough money to solve their money problem.
Mhm.
And so I think a paradigm or perspective shift where you're moving from what about my job to how do I solve my money problem
Mhm.
is probably helpful. It frees up your mind, opens options for you. So once you've done that, I think then you could begin to think about multiple kinds of strategies for solving that money problem that integrate more fully with the vision of what you're trying to create. What would a satisfying life look like for me?
Mhm.
Now, conventionally, at least for the last, since the end of World War II for sure, right? We've had this model where everyone has one job and works it for a long time. Now that's changing. And that might work for someone like the veterinarian I just mentioned.
Mhm.
Goes to work every day, saves dogs' lives. Great.
Mhm.
Okay. So that kind of conventional model might work for some people, but it doesn't work for everyone. I mean, you're talking about that right now since COVID, how much work has changed.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I just think people need to start with like their why and their what's the end I'm trying to achieve. And
Mhm.
then how efficiently is my job solving my money problem?
Mhm.
And and I think too, like that reduces people's sense of being trapped in their job. So you ask, well, I'm
mm,
anxious because I don't, my boss is texting me on the weekend and this is my time and I don't know if I should respond, blah, blah, blah. Well, all of that is an indication of the efficiency of your current solution to your money problem.
Mhm.
So
mhm.
if your boss is demanding that you work all weekend every weekend, and that's not good for you,
Mhm.
and he's not satisfying your money problem.
Hmm.
He's not solving your problem. And so we tend to think of ourselves with relationship to jobs as being totally disempowered. Like I'm dependent on this. But once you switch from I have a money problem, is this efficiently solving that? You're in a much more empowered position because now you are an active agent trying to solve this problem that you have, and rather than like a dependent person who needs this.
Hmm.
And the other thing is that I think in terms of establishing kind of work life, not balance, I guess that's passe, but work life, an efficient and healthy work life relationship is that is to think of just work as one component of your life.
Mhm.
And because most, like I said, most people don't know why they're working. Especially there are people who have like tons of money who've completely solved their money problem, probably solved their children's money problem, and still keep working some stressed out job because
Yeah.
they've never stopped to think, what is the purpose of working like this? Because it is the default mode of living in American culture.
Mhm.
I remember a few years ago I went to the Dominican Republic and it's Tuesday afternoon and you see all these working age guys sitting around playing checkers out in front of the store. And it's just a different culture with a different understanding of work, et cetera. Now, of course, there's downsides to that, right? A lot of people in the Dominican, very poor, lots of underdeveloped places. They need hospitals, et cetera. So I'm not saying that's a solution to everything. I'm just pointing out that different cultures have a different understanding of work. And it's so easy when you grow up in America to not question that at all.
Yes.
And I think part of what's happened to us as we've moved toward remote work, et cetera, is that lots of people have begun to question that model.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I encourage that completely. Like how and switch
Yeah.
from what do I do to how do I stay alive? How do I get enough money to stay alive and pay all my bills? That's a survival mindset. How do I
Yeah.
solve my money problem? That is an empowered mindset. And I guess I would first thing I would encourage people to do is switch to that empowered mindset of I have a problem. I have the same problem every human being has. What are the ways I could solve it?
I love that perspective. I think in coaching, certainly here at Alive Designed, we try to give people, as you say, the sense of empowerment to redesign what
Mhm.
is working, what is not working. I was
Mhm.
watching an interview with a nurse. I think, Brian, you shared this clip with me, and she just had enough with some malfeasance at the hospital. She wasn't able to call out a doctor who was putting a patient at risk. She wasn't able to call out a more senior person who did not put in the right amount of something into somebody's veins. And it was obvious to the nurses her complaints were going unheard by the nurse supervisor who just didn't need any trouble and didn't really care. And so you can feel trapped in a job where I've set up my lifestyle, where I need this check in order to pay for things. A bigger challenge is my identity is a nurse at Memorial Hospital. I'm an ER nurse. That's who I am. My
Mhm.
friends are also ER professionals or medical professionals. If I stop being an ER nurse at Memorial Hospital, who am I? You
Mhm.
know, if I find something else to do that pays me the same amount of money, what do I tell my friends and family? I'm not an ER nurse anymore. So you find this even at the top end, as you mentioned, Dean, people who exit in venture capital situations. They worked hard to build a business. It was 5 years, it was 10 years. Parachutes of money fell on top of them as they exited out, and a big company took them over. What did they do
Mhm.
with time? Who are they now? They can feel like they've been sent out to pasture. They don't have anything to work on, and they worked on it exclusively for years. So I'm the big guy that built XYZ company, which is no longer mine. I have a pile of money. I don't need to work for money. And so, but I don't have an identity anymore. You see them often go out and try to strike gold again. Well, I struck gold with this company. I'm going to go out and try to strike gold again. And they may not manage to find another company to grow big. But one of the questions to ask yourself is, how happy or unhappy am I in my workplace? What are the things I can do about it? It could be that they don't think you own your time. So if you want to keep working there, you actually have to relent or go work someplace else. And then who am I to my friends and family in my community if I'm no longer this? Could you be prepared to stop being that and be something else? Another idea, and then I'll open it back up to both of you, is when you think about money, it feels like people are like tied to a wagon like a horse and they're pulling a cart 40 hours a week or 60 hours a week because they pay for the family and they pay for the mortgage. And um, if you look at the money pressures, it might be that you could do a part-time job, drive Grubhub or something, and pay off the credit card debt and eliminate the idea that you have to earn this much money because you're out of whack in terms of what your financial obligations are, and find another way to eat away at those obligations so that you have more freedom about what you do with your time. If you did that, maybe you could work 30 hours and spend 10 hours a week looking after your mom, who's now, not able to care for herself as well as she could. Whatever's going on, there might be alternative ways to produce the revenue. But also to look at your identity. Are you okay that you're not a veterinarian, that you're not an ER nurse, that, you're not working a white collar job, you're now working a blue collar job? A lot of advice that's happened over the last 5 years is to tell kids, don't go to college, become a journeyman plumber, become
Mhm.
someone that's perfect at drywall or concrete, because out of the gate, you're earning 80 grand a year while your friends are spending 80 grand a year getting an education that'll give them a $40,000 a year job. So
Right.
there are some things that have kind of tipped upside down, but your identity's sort of trapped in, you decided to be a plumber instead of going to college. Well, I decided to buy a house and marry my girlfriend. That's what I decided. So I'm making those choices and funding that lifestyle with the job I chose instead of my identity of I graduated college. Any thoughts, Brian or Dean?
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, so sure, I'll just get into some other points here that I was going to mention. So I know, Mom, you wanted me to mention a couple things. So one thing was about procrastinating. One strategy for that is, I mean, it's simple, but it can help. If you find yourself procrastinating, break it into easier, smaller pieces and kind of spread it out. That's a good strategy to use. Also, I find this interesting, and I've found this to be true. Talking about blue collar work versus white collar work,
Mhm.
and someone was mentioning one of the problems with white collar work is you sort of never leave the job
Mhm.
because it's thinking work. So you're always like having to think about work. One
Mhm.
thing that's great about blue collar work is when you leave, I mean, that's it. When I was towing cars, I mean, I don't have to think about towing cars. When my shift's over, it's over.
Mhm.
I'm like, my mind is free, you know? I
Mhm.
don't really have to think about anything going on at work. Then
Mhm.
you show up, you go tow your cars, turn the truck back in, that's it, you know?
Mhm.
So that's an advantage. And I think that's actually part of the reason why a lot of blue collar jobs, they have more hours, but the guys seem to be able to do those hours.
Mhm.
One of the keys to that is when you leave work, you really leave work.
Mhm.
Whereas like on the white collar jobs, yeah, maybe it's 40 hours, but you're stressing, you're thinking about the
Mhm.
decisions, what you're going to say in the meetings, like what's
Mhm.
going on at the job, even when you're at home. So,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, you want to talk about filling your cup, which is something that we want to talk about here at ALD,
Mhm.
which is just finding things in general that just you just enjoy,
Mhm.
that just bring you contentment, or they're just
Mhm.
fun, or they bring you sense of happiness, and that does go a long way towards making you feel a lot better, like at work.
Mhm.
If you're really like satisfied with what you do with your free time,
Mhm.
you'll have a lot more emotional, mental energy to bring to your job.
Mm.
Uh, if your home life sucks and your job's not that great, it's just kind of
What are we doing? Yeah.
your job will get even worse. Like you'll want to do less at work. You won't really care. You'll become more like checked out, you know?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, like for me, pool is my main hobby. I love pool and pool is great. I've also found for traveling because I can just go to pool halls, play with people, and I make new friends. I meet new people.
Mhm.
It's like one of the easiest ways to like meet new people, even if you're in a different country,
Mhm.
because people that love pool, love to play pool all the time.
Mhm.
Seeing the same people in the pool halls over and over, and you start talking, and
Mhm. Mhm.
you make friends. You meet people. So um, that was always like really helpful for me. Like especially when I was working 60 hours a week or sometimes more towing.
Mhm.
I felt like if I could just play pool on the weekend, have a few beers, have a lot of fun, that I was good. Like that would be enough
Mhm.
fun. That would be enough relaxation, de-stressing that I would feel fine
Mhm.
going to work for 60 hours the next week.
Mhm.
So that kind of sustained me, like having that. If I didn't have something like that, I don't know if I could have handled the work schedule. So,
I know sometimes when we talk with people who have begun dating, and they were in a relationship that's completed, now they have to be back out in the dating world. One of the common dating questions is, what do you do for fun? And there are people stuck for an answer. Like, fun? Tell me about
yeah.
this fun. What are you talking about? I work, I handle my obligations, I sleep, I get up and do it again. There are some people who've just neglected the other parts of their life. And they're the only one that can now turn their attention into writing poetry, going to a concert, walking the 10 different parks that are within 5 miles of their front door, whatever the things are that would bring them some rewarding component that is not work, that is not, chores. Some people have forgotten. They've been ground down a little bit and they have to sort of reawaken and discover new. And I think it's true if you're going to go play chess in the park or you're going to do words with friends on your phone, it takes your mind into another place and you're not thinking about work. You're just having fun with people, and everyone knows the rules of the game once they learn them. So the game itself is not stressful, because you're playing a game they understand also. So finding some relaxation, filling your cup so that you feel like your life is worth living. You've found enjoyment by yourself in the company of others, whatever that looks like. Dean, any thoughts on that?
I wanted to talk about the identity question.
Great.
So just like we're all born with a money problem,
Mm-hmm.
we're all also born with a meaning problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have, as growing human beings, to respond to both of these problems: our money problem and our meaning problem. How will I how will I pay for everything? How will I pay to stay alive?
Mm-hmm.
How will I resource myself?
Mm-hmm.
And what for?
Mm-hmm.
And so I keep going back to the example of the veterinarian who every time she deworms a dog or whatever, she knows she's done good. She's moved with compassion for the animal, and she knows that she's helped this family. So that's part of the what for, right? That our meaning problem is best solved when we have like a connection to something, to the right values, to a sense of good that we're doing. The problem, I think, for a lot of people is that, and I think our culture really encourages this, they so prioritize the money problem over the meaning problem
Mm-hmm.
that
Mhm.
lots of people don't even think about the meaning problem.
Yes.
And so what happens is that when your identity becomes totally tied to your job, that's because you haven't attended to the meaning problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one thing to be an ER nurse, right? Because an ER nurse has like an inherent connection to good values, to doing good.
Life-saving activities. Mm-hmm.
The real question is like, what about when you are senior data entry management technician for some corporation where you have
You're
people don't
a
you've been
cog
there
in the wheel. You're just a
no
cog.
you've been there 10 years, people don't know your name.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you know
Yeah.
that tomorrow they could replace you.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, that's when that becomes your identity, it's a problem. Now, when we as human beings have insufficiently addressed the meaning question,
Hmm.
we often try to distract ourselves from that because it hurts to not have the meaning question answered.
Hmm.
And when we find something that works to distract us and we go back to it again and again, we typically call that an addiction or a compulsion, right?
Hmm.
The reality is that many people continue to work because they are, in fact, in a way, addicted to the difficulty and drama of their jobs.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right. So that when my boss texts me all weekend long, I make a big show of how I hate it, but it also the drama of that gives me kind of an illusion of meaning.
Hmm.
And that if you if you truly want to sort of redesign your life, you're going to have to break that addiction because when your boss texts you 14 times in a weekend, it may be annoying, but also makes you feel powerful and special
Yeah.
and needed.
Value.
And so you're going to have to break all that and really begin to attend to the question of your meaning problem, which I was addressing earlier by saying you have to develop a holistic vision of what a meaningful and rewarding life would look like for you.
Hmm. And it's different with each person.
Yeah.
We find too that someone is complaining their spouse does so much shopping. And as you
Mm.
say, it's a distraction from other things that are making them unhappy. So they get the dopamine fix of, I finally bought that handbag I want. And look, honey, it's $100 off. See, I'm saving money.
Mhm.
So no, you're spending money. So, but whether it's the sports betting or porn or shopping addiction or, nasty comments on Instagram to really show people that you know what's going on, whatever those things are that are offering distractions are not adding meaning to your life. As you say, they're sort of pointing out that you are lacking meaning in your life. You're not doing things that are usefully rewarding to you, in, wholesome, harmonious relationships with other people. You're a targeted assassin in comments on YouTube or something. And while you get the momentary dopamine hit, wow, I really told that person what time it is. It's not rewarding over time. So I think giving yourself permission to just take a frank look, to do an assessment about, yeah, I work too much and I'm over it. It was very fun in the beginning and I really valued my title and my budget and um but yeah, I'm not as rewarded by it anymore. And so, or I'm ready for more, but I'm not going to get promoted where I am. So how do I think about, shifting where I am in my career so that I have more money, but also a bigger challenge? I beat the big boss at this level. I'm ready to go to next level and beat the next boss, and they won't up level me. So this got boring. Whatever your circumstances are, you can redesign it so it's best suited for you.
Mhm.
And asking the questions, well, what is best suited for me is one of the places to start.
Absolutely. But hire a coach to help you with that.
Yeah, but
Yes. Yes. And speaking to what you're saying, Mom, I do think people should also realize that, you can set your own terms at a job. I think a lot of people really don't realize this. They think, well, they hired me to do this, so I just have to do that. Or they hired me, so I just have to do what they say. You can go talk to your boss and say, hey, I need this to change for this job to really work for me. And, if they don't like it or they don't agree, you can start looking for another job. Like you can negotiate things. Like you can negotiate working remotely 1 or 2 days a week, or you can do that. And people need to realize that they can be empowered to do that. Or you can negotiate, hey, on Thursdays, I need to leave 2 hours early. I got to go attend my kids' soccer games or, whatever it is. realize and remember that you have that power. Like everything doesn't have to be on preset terms.
Hmm.
And maybe they say, okay, you could do that, but I'm going to need you to do this other thing. And you could say, okay, I can do that other thing. Like,
Hmm.
but the point is, you can negotiate and make a job work more for you and not just wholly accept what they're giving you.
Hmm.
You can have your own life and negotiate your own terms, you know?
Hmm.
I think people should do that probably more often.
I think too, the change is built in, and you haven't done it wrong when you chose that job. If 2 years in or 4 years in, you're not a fit for it anymore, or it's not a fit for you.
Mhm.
It just means growth and change happened in the interim. It's not wrong. You didn't do it badly. Now it's just time to do something else. And so whether it's not be an ER nurse or whether it's work at a different hospital or whatever that looks like, explore your options. And if you prioritize yourself and your happiness to lead a rewarding life that works for you, then you can understand why I should be exploring my options. And well, this has been a fun discussion. So, Dean, can you tell us how to find you if we need to hire a coach and find meaning in our life?
Yes, deanabbott.com or at Dean Abbott on Twitter are best.
Oh, okay, good. Well, I'll include those in the show notes.
Okay.
How about you, Brian? Other than someone who wants to understand pool, people want to get a hold of you. How do they do that?
Yes, thelifedesign.org or Special K Coaching on Instagram.
Oh, very good. Okay, well, this has been fun. We want to encourage people in the new year. You can design your life or redesign it. And we invite you to try lots of strategies out there. We've gone over some today. Give them a try, reach out if it's helpful. And we'll see you all at the next one.
See ya.
See ya.